Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now, you'll recall from the previous episode we did a revised mock-up of the canopy section for the main station building, and I'd probably safely say that that will be the final mock-up, so it'll be a case of actually getting into the real model for this. Now, in today's episode, what we really need to look at, of course, is the other buildings. So we have this Coles Lamps room, of course, which is at one end of the main station building, and then of course we've got the building on platform 2. So obviously, to keep you all in suspense a little bit longer, there is these two other buildings, as I mentioned, the Coles and Lamps room and of course the building on platform 2. So I really do need to do mock-ups of these before we can carry on with anything else. So we'll start with the Coles and Lamps room because that's probably the easier of the two, and then of course get into the building on platform 2, which unfortunately we really have very little to no plans or any kind of reference in order to be able to work out the dimensions, proportions and all of that type of thing. So I think without further ado, let's just jump into what I got up to. So if we start with the Coles and Lamps room, which of course is the outbuilding that's right next to the station at the right hand end if you're looking from the street, and from this plan here, which is one of the architectural plans that Laura and Gill had drawn up based on the current station plan as it was when they purchased the property. So you can see just a basic rectangle at the end of the station, and that's all there is. There was nothing further drawn up as far as I'm aware for this Coles and Lamps room. So we do have the size, the footprint of this building, but apart from that there is nothing else, and I'm assuming, or I'm hoping, that the distance from the main station building is also indicated here as well. So looking at it from an elevation standpoint, and this is some architectural plans that I've extracted from the plans that Laura and Gill are intending to do when it comes to renovating the station and doing the add-ons, because of course the Coles and Lamps room is going to actually become part of the station. I think that they're joining it together. There's going to be some kind of connection between the two. Now I've actually taken that out and of course remove some other bits and pieces that are yet to be added, just so I can sort of look at it from the point of how it used to be. So as you can see there on the right hand side, there is just a basic outline of this outbuilding, which of course I do believe was the Coles and Lamps room. So we've got the pitch of the roof, the height of the building, we've got the distance between the main station building and this outbuilding. So if this is reasonably accurate, I think it's a good basis, because now I can work out the footprint for the building, so that's the outer extremities, and we've also got the height of this building as well. So that's a good starting point. So this is just a screen grab from one of Laura and Gill's videos, and of course one of the things that's pretty obvious with this outbuilding is that at some point it got extended, and it got extended with some wooden structure and I think breeze block and things like that as well, that kind of almost looks like maybe it's been doubled in length. But you can see roughly where that drain pipe is in the middle there. You can see the edge of the original building, so you can see the cornerstones there, and of course you've got two doors, and they appear to look as if they're centralized within this sort of middle column. And of course we've got a little bit of a detail for the eaves at the end of the roof there, and the gable ends with the barge board shape there as well. So there's not a lot of photos that show this building back in the day when the station was in operation. And of course this is a photo from, I think, the 80s, or what was it, 1983 or something like that. I think this was a photo, once again, I think during the period when it was two separate flats, and you can just see the end of this outbuilding here. Now, it's not a brilliant photo, unfortunately, but what we can deduce is there's no windows in the end walls. There is only windows on the back walls. So this is not actually the station in question. This is one of the other stations on the same line, and as I mentioned some time back, 3 of these stations were built and they were all identical. And you can see here, this is the other end of that outbuilding, which would be the coals and lamps room, and you can actually see there's a brick wall here as well that goes around it. And I do believe that originally at Lorraton Station there would have been a brick wall there. It would have been the same as this. So one of the things to note here, of course, is it appears that that brick wall is in line with the front of the station here, and this is of course on the street side, and this outbuilding, or the coals and lamps room, is pushed back, so it's not hard up against the street frontage. So there's this alcove or possibly courtyard or something in between the fence and the end of the wall there, and that possibly could have been a storage area for trolleys or something like that. Baggage trolleys or sack barrows and things like that may have actually gone in that area. So with the building being pushed back from the street side, I just wanted to check and see that the other end of the building is actually lined up with the front of the station on the platform side, and it does seem to be, and that sort of comes through in those architectural plans as well, that it was lined up with the platform side of the building. So in terms of actually working out the model version of this, it looks as if the stonework and those corner blocks and also that sort of stone course that runs down the lower part of the wall, that all seems to be very similar to the actual station building. So basically I copied the stone elements and proportions from my station mock-up over to this outbuilding in order to sort of work out how things measured up with the proportions of this outbuilding, and it actually seemed to work in quite well. So that's the coals and lamps room now placed on the platform adjacent to the station, and of course we've got a simple representation of this brick wall, and there would be some kind of gate or even fence that ran along between that and the edge of the station building. So I think this is working out pretty well. It's proportionally, it seems right, and of course around the other side it's running in line with the front of the station, obviously on the platform side. So I'm pretty happy with the outcome for this particular mock-up. So much like the coals and lamps room or the outbuilding to the right of the main station, the building on platform 2 is also a little bit difficult to find decent photographs. So most of the photos that I've been able to find, of course, have all been taken from the road bridge. So as you can see with this one here, there is the station building on platform 2, and as you can see it's kind of half buried into the embankment. Now that embankment used to be the branch line or siding that went to this quarry, which of course I covered in the previous episode. So it's a bit tricky to tell from this photo the size proportions, although you can sort of roughly compare it with the station on the other side. You can clearly see though it is sharing the same architectural design. So we've got these bands of stonework through the brickwork, we've got the same kind of window shapes and window frames, so that's at least a good start. So although this photo is obviously not the station in question, and much like the outbuilding where I showed an example photo from, I believe it possibly is this station as well, but in here of course we get a bit of a better view of the building on platform 2. You can see once again the stonework, and you can see the stonework course that runs through the upper part of the window. So clearly the architecture was mimicked, and to some degree, and this is something that I wanted to investigate, I almost sort of feel like, or wonder whether this building on platform 2 shared similar qualities to the central component of the main station building. So not the end pieces, but the bit in the middle, basically the booking waiting hall. So in terms of working out the actual dimensions for this building on platform 2, it's a lot trickier than it was for the Coles and Lamps room or the outbuilding, because obviously we had that footprint outline that the architects had drawn up. So this platform building is not on Laura Gill's property, and this is the best quality satellite view I can actually find, and it's actually from 2006. I actually found that the more recent satellite views aren't as crisp as this. This is as good as it's going to get, I think, unless of course anyone out there knows where I might be able to find a much higher res satellite view. But I think it's good enough for me to be able to work out the dimensions, the size of this platform 2 building. So I've just marked out a line here running along the ridge of the roof, and of course it meets up with the end of the ridge at each end of this roof. And if we factor in the wall, and I can just make out a little bit of wall there, so obviously the roof extends beyond the wall, of course we know that, and down here it's a little bit more fuzzy down here, which is a bit tricky to work out. But if we take the line and just drag it in a bit, so say that the wall is about there at that end, and maybe the wall is in about here at that end roughly. So if we take this line and bring it over to here, and what I'm going to do is just position it so it's shorter than the ridge of that roof, but if we position it roughly in here, and this is not by any means absolutely accurate, this is just a general way of trying to work out what size this building is in relation to the station, because the thing is, we know the size of the station, we know its accurate dimensions. So if I can make this comparison on the satellite view of roughly how big is this building in relation to this building. So we've now got these two endpoints. We know that the wall ends here. Now you can just make out we've got the 3 sets of windows and the 3 sets of windows, and according to our satellite view, the platform 2 building comes just shy of inside those windows, which makes me believe that the platform 2 building potentially is using this area here. Now the only difference is potentially these windows are further along. So if we draw out the shape of these windows in here, just the pair of them together, and I believe possibly these windows may be more separated out this way, and then of course we've got our door in here. So going back to this satellite view, as you can see, we've got our end sections here, which is the same as this one here. It seems to be roughly sort of coming down in between the window and the corner of the wall and the window, and that roughly seems to work out somewhere about here. So there's a bit of guesswork in this, but it's possibly about here. And this is really the central part of the building. So if we actually go to our plan view, is the platform 2 building a version of this area here? So we've got our external walls, and is it something like that? But I don't think it's as deep as this. I don't think it's as wide. I think it's definitely a bit narrower like that. But this is what I'm wondering the platform 2 building is like, and it actually shares some of these elements here, like the doors and the windows. So if we go back to this photo, you can see there's a space there between the window and the corner of the building, and then the space between that and the door I do believe is the same. And so I think the windows are more spaced out, but I do honestly believe that at least this front wall is very similar to the actual wall that's here, like this part of the station, possibly even the same height and things like that. So based on that, I think I'm going to be able to figure out what this Platform 2 building was actually like in terms of its proportions, dimensions and so forth. So with all that investigation that I did on the computer and satellite views and the various limited photos that I could find, it was in a case of just working out a plan for the elevations, side and front elevations for this. And once again, similar to the Coals and Lamps room, it was borrowing the window elements and stone corner sections and so forth from the main station building, which I would assume would be the same or obviously very similar, because we could see that the architectural style was of course very similar. So if that all set up, I've just printed this out now and just trimming it up. Now I'll confess that this is actually version number 2 of this building, because I did do an initial one, placed it on the Platform 2 and kind of felt it wasn't quite right. I felt that the pitch of the roof was just slightly too high and the overall height of the walls was too high. Now once I've finished sorting out this one and assembling this, we'll put this on the Platform 2, but one of the things that I need to consider, of course, is Platform 2 on my layout is very different from the Platform 2 at the actual station in question. So I've got a plan about what I might do there, but we'll get to that later in this episode. So I'll just carry on trimming all of these components out, these wall sections, very much the same as all the other mock-ups that I've done, and you'll be able to find the process in previous episodes of these mock-ups. So I'll just get on, do this and get it all assembled. Right, so I've now assembled the mock-up number 2 for the Platform 2 building, and it's just subtly different proportionally to the first mock-up I did, and I kind of think when you put them side by side you wouldn't really sort of know, but the angle of the pitch, I've lowered that a little bit and lowered the wall, and also actually the roof as well. I've just actually increased the eaves out a little bit as well, because they were a little bit tight on the previous mock-up. So that's how it's looking. I think it's pretty good proportionally. One of the aspects to note is, of course, I have no photos of the back of this building number 2. Now the interesting thing is, with that other station I looked at that had the better photo, of course it may have had windows in the back. I really don't know. All I know is that in the central part here was obviously a chimney breast, because there is a chimney up here somewhere. Now for the station in question, this is an embankment. So this building on Platform 2, actually, there's an embankment that sort of comes up here somewhere, and so I can't imagine that there would be any windows on the back wall, because that would be heaped up with earth. So I'm not quite sure what was happening on the back of the number 2 platform building for the station in question. Anyway, we'll get this over to the layout and we'll start discussing the thoughts I had about the position of this building and its proportional size to my Platform 2. Right, so we've now got the building on Platform 2, and I've positioned it in the same position as it is at the station in question, which seems to be almost directly opposite the main station building, obviously on Platform 1. Now, as you can see, there is rather a large elephant in the room, and as I previously hinted, my Platform 2 is clearly not the same as the Platform 2 at the station in question, and there is just simply not the same amount of room. So the building here just looks far too oversized for my platform 2, and it really actually comes into question. Actually, my platform 2 is really quite a small platform if you look at it in scale terms. So this is pushed up against the edge of the bay line or the bay platform, and there's very little room out the front. Now there's a couple of possible solutions to this. One is I just simply do a scaled down version of this, so it's maybe it's narrower than the actual building in terms of its scale proportions, and I'm a little bit reluctant to do that. I really like the idea of being able to have the same proportions between the main station building and the platform 2 building, so that there's this correlation and relationship that's consistent between the two. So my thought is, rather than having this building on platform 2 positioned directly opposite the main station building on platform 1, I'm thinking of moving it down this way, and then instead of the bay platform running the entire length of this platform, I'm just putting this little bit of wood in here as a support, is pushing the building back a little bit further, and maybe the building's about there somewhere, and this becomes a true bay platform, and it actually ends down here, and the platform actually runs across at the end here. Now the other benefit of this is that I can then actually build up a little bit of an embankment in here as per the actual real station, so it will look actually a little bit more like the actual station, even with the sort of track up behind. Although I've got this retaining wall here, I'm certainly not getting rid of that, but at least it might actually has some similarities. So the idea is that I'll keep this platform as it is, but the platform will actually, I'll push it all the way back, and this bit of track here will get cut off about here, and then this will just simply become a shorter bay platform, but enough for actually a 2 or potentially a 3 car DMU. So we could have a 2 car DMU that comes in through our branch line, or we could actually fit in a 3 car DMU that's coming in off the main line. So I think it's actually quite a good solution, and basically now what it's doing is actually giving us that space that we need, and it just looks so much more appropriate than it being jammed in here like this. So the interesting thing is I looked at this other station. Now the reason why I keep saying it's the other station is because you can't ask me to pronounce Welsh names and without getting it wrong. So this particular station had 4 tracks running through the middle, and the interesting thing about this station is the main station building and the building on platform 2 were not directly opposite each other. And what's even more interesting is that the footbridge, the steps went up one side on the footbridge, but on the other platform the steps came down the other side. So I think to a certain degree, with a little bit of artistic license, that I'm going to go with this situation here where the platform 2 building is not directly opposite the platform 1 building, and we have it slightly off skewed, and then it's kind of a little bit like that the other station, one of the other stations on this line. So there we have it. I think with mock-ups of the other 2 buildings now complete, and I'm pretty happy with the building on platform 2, and also deciding what to do in terms of the limited space I have there. So we're breaking away even further from Law and Gill Station for the Station Road layout, but of course when it comes to Law and Gill's model that I'm building for them, that will be more prototypical in the sense that the building on platform 2 will be directly opposite the main station building, and there will be the appropriate space and platform widths and so forth as well. So I guess with the mock-ups now complete, now is the exciting part, and that is actually getting into starting to build the real live models. Now, what I am going to do, and I think it's probably a wise decision, and that is to start with the Coals and Lamps room, move on to the Platform 2 building, and then finish with the main station building. And that way, if there's anything that goes wrong, or if I make any mistakes or stuff anything up, at least I'll be starting with the smaller buildings first by the time I come around to doing the main station building, which clearly is going to be the most complex. I should be well versed with being able to assemble that without too many, I guess, cock-ups. So I'll leave it there for today's episode. I certainly hope you've gained some inspiration and ideas for your own layouts. Do take care, look after yourselves. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.